Hi, everyone. Welcome to Intro to Ethics. And this is the winter version of the course. So first, before we even start on the syllabus, I'm going to say in advance that this class is going to be a lot. You're going to have a lot of reading to do every day. So be prepared to have every weekday, that is, be prepared to have something to do every single day. And I'm not going to lie, the readings are pretty tough. And you're likely going to be confused, but you got to stay on top of everything if you want to make it through this course, right? So we're just doing a whole lot of material very quickly. And so I want to just advise you to be diligent with everything. The other thing that I promise to do is, because this class is so difficult and because the readings are so difficult, I plan to curve your exams. I plan to curve your quizzes, right? And I plan to take that into account when I grade your papers, right? So all of this stuff aside, you're going to do okay, right? You're going to be frustrated. You might feel confused some of the time. You might feel confused like all of the time. But just know that if you complete everything, right, you will not likely fail, even though it feels like you don't understand stuff. So anyway, that's my disclaimer. Now let's talk about how interesting and exciting this class is going to be. So this is a philosophy class, Intro to Ethics. So our primary sort of target question is why are things right and wrong, right? What do we mean when we say that something is morally right? What do we mean when we say that something is morally wrong? And so we have all sorts of interesting questions. And since these questions really aren't settled, really aren't settled, everything is open for debate. So this class is going to be a lively class where we give arguments for different positions, and then we give objections to those arguments. It's all about discussion. It's all about trying to contribute to an ongoing conversation. Okay. So let's see. So for the class, you're going to have required texts. You won't have any textbooks to buy, anything like that. Everything's going to be on PDF, and it's going to be available on our Brightspace page. So curious students can look at these websites for more information. I'm sure you're not going to want to do that. In fact, I just know you won't want to do that. But perhaps you're writing a paper and you want to maybe use an outside source. These are two really good websites for that purpose. Okay, student learning outcomes. Think about our philosophy, make arguments, critique arguments, be able to write clearly, all of these sorts of things. These are the learning outcomes. You can read these in more detail, but generally speaking, you should be able to entertain an interlocutor, right? Or somebody who disagrees with you, hear out their perspective and be able to think through their argument, and then be able to not only reconstruct their argument to them, but also be able to critique and evaluate arguments that you disagree with, and critique and evaluate arguments that you do agree with, right? Okay. All right. Here is the breakdown of your grade for the course. So we're going to have seven quizzes, 7 or 8 quizzes that are going to take up 21% of your grade. So each quiz is worth 3%. And like I said, I'm going to curve these. So you'll probably have at least 2 quizzes a week, with the exception of the last week, because then you'll have the final exam. You're going to have this thing called the Indiana plagiarism tutorial, which we'll talk about in a minute. You're going to have 2 papers, and you're also going to have 2 exams. The exams are going to be a combination of questions from the quizzes, right? As well as some essays that you'll write for the exams. If any of this worries you, please contact me. I try to make myself just as widely available as possible, given that we are on winter break, and that this is kind of like the summer, right? I may be a little less responsive, but I promise to get back with you within 2 days for sure. Hopefully within like 6 hours of your sending me an email or whatever. Okay. Indiana plagiarism tutorial. This is, you can go to this website, and what you do is you take this exam, you watch all these videos, learn all this stuff, and then you take an exam and you learn about what plagiarism is. And you don't learn about plagiarism so you can plagiarize better. You learn about plagiarism so you can avoid plagiarism, right? So I am going to be operating. So when you complete this, I'm operating under the assumption that you know what plagiarism is. And if you plagiarize on a paper, that's like really bad, right? And I'm going to catch you. Like, I promise I'm going to catch you. So I'm giving you this assignment so that I can hold you responsible for your for plagiarism in the future, right? So complete this. What you're going to do is you're going to get a certificate, and you can take a screenshot of the email or a screenshot of the certificate, and you're going to upload it into the course website under the assignment in Brightspace. Okay, papers. So you're going to have a number of different paper prompts, right? So you should have like 3 or 4 to choose from. And basically the prompts are going to be like a set of questions. Like, what is this author's argument? Explain it. What is an objection to the argument? Explain that. And then the prompt is going to like want you to entertain your own thoughts about the discussion that you've laid out, right? So, okay, so we might look at an argument for why eating meat is morally wrong. And then you're going to say like, okay, here's a problem with the argument. And then the last part is going to be like you thinking through the discussion, right? You making a contribution to the discussion. Does the objection work, right? Or is the argument correct already? Let's see here. So biggest thing is to answer the prompt completely. Don't forget any part of the prompt. Meet the word length. These papers are like 3 to 4 pages. They're like not super long, but like long enough, right? You can't use outside sources. Okay. So what I said up here about Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy, Internet Encyclopedia, don't do it, right? But I will say, if you email me and you have an outside source that you'd like to bring into the paper, email it to me and we can talk about it, right? So this is not like a super hard and fast rule. This is basically to just get you guys to engage with the course material without like entertaining 30 different sources and like not a whole lot's being done, right? So just imagine that for the most part, the paper is about you and the text, right? Maybe with the help of my lecture videos, it's about you thinking through an argument, you thinking through a text. Okay, no extra credit, office hours. I don't have any scheduled office hours, but we can meet and talk if you would like to at this link here. Or I'll email you a link. But anyway, if you want to say, if you want to meet with me, just send me an email and we can schedule a time. Late policy. So late policy is every day that something is late, that's a 1 full letter grade drop. And after 3 days, it's just a 0, right? So if you have work and you can't turn something in because of work, like try and know that in advance. Like don't turn something in and then later, like don't not turn something in and then later say, oh, I had work or whatever after the 3 days. I'm going to give you less leeway there because you should have let me know in advance, right? So do let me know in advance if you can't turn certain things in. Okay. Cheating. Don't cheat, right? Don't plagiarize. Please don't plagiarize. These papers might be kind of confusing. They might be hard, but you have me here to help you. And I'm here to help you with your paper, maybe give you comments and such. But don't resort to just like pulling stuff off of a website and putting it into your paper. It's bad. It cheapens the value of your degree and your fellow classmates' degree. Revision of the syllabus. I reserve the right to say, revise the syllabus and change it. Disability statement. If you need to contact disability services, all that information is there. A note about philosophy. It can be, philosophy is really hard, and I'm making you read a lot. But it roughly takes about an hour to read 10 pages of high quality philosophical writing. So I would budget, right, 2 to 3 hours just to read a day, right? This is a lot. There's a lot to ask of you, but this is a winter class. So budget your time. Make this class your job. Okay. So here are the different concepts that we're going to be going over in the course. I'm gonna say that the course has what we might call a funnel effect, or a funnely features, we might say. We're going to start kind of general, like moral, what we might call moral theory level. We're going to be asking questions like, why is something wrong at all, right? Or what is it that makes an action wrong, right? So do all morally wrong actions have some kind of common feature? Those are the kinds of questions we're going to be entertaining. So let's see. So for Monday, this first Monday, we're going to be looking at kind of an intro to argument. So before we even get to like morality and stuff, we're going to be thinking about like kind of like what is philosophy, right? And like what's the method of philosophy. And so the method of philosophy involves giving arguments and refuting arguments. That's like kind of what we do here. And so our goal with this first day is to like learn about how to do arguments, because you're going to be making arguments and reading lots of arguments through the whole semester. Good. Then we move on to ethics. So we're going to just like very sort of at the general level talk about like what is ethics. We're going to look at Creel, about 10 pages from Creel. And then we're going to be thinking through like moral dilemmas, right? So if you have if you have to save one person or save 5 people, do you save the 5 people or do you like save the one person, right? And so these are called moral dilemmas. You have to, it seems like you're going to be doing something wrong either way, but like, why should we prefer one option over another? These kinds of things. Okay. Now we're going to move on to these moral theories. This is like the kind of funnel, the top part of the funnel. And moral theories are these kind of accounts, general accounts of like what makes everything morally wrong, right? What is morally wrong? Well, we want to have like a unified theory about what makes stuff morally wrong. And so we're going to be entertaining several of these moral theories. So first, we want to talk about potentially like a moral theory that's like bad, and that's moral relativism. According to moral relativism, there is no right and wrong. That's objective. Rather, it's just all subjective, right? So like, that's just like your opinion or whatever. Like we hear people talk about this. So people like think are moral relativists. And it's going to be helpful to think about whether that's a sound or plausible position, right? So we're going to look at 2 arguments, 2 authors that say that relativism is not a good position to have, okay? And then on that Wednesday, so this is the first Wednesday of, this is the third day of class, you're going to have a quiz over all of this stuff, right? So be ready for that. Okay, let's see. And then Thursday and Friday, we're going to be talking about a number of different moral theories. I'm not going to go into like a whole lot of depth right now about the moral theories. You're going to get a lot more depth on those days in the lectures and in the readings. But the idea here is that we are starting at kind of the most general level, and then we're like going to get more specific as the course goes on, right? Kind of funnel in on particular questions. So we're going to be entertaining these like moral theory things. And at the end of this first week, right, or beginning of the next week, you may have a moral theory or maybe should have a moral theory that you kind of identify with a little bit more. And you want to be able to show like, why is that moral theory better than other moral theories? And we're going to be talking about problems with all of the moral theories. So anyway, this is an important part of the class, even though it's going to be very sort of abstract. Okay. On Monday, we're going to be talking about not just individual actions, right? But we're going to be talking about the ethics of like societies, the ethics of institutions, right? We're going to be kind of looking at it. Ethics of like groups of people living together. And we're going to be reading two authors, Rawls and Young, for that, right? So these moral theories here are all about individual actions and relationships and individual intentions. Whereas here we're going to see the intentions and actions of an institution. How can we evaluate the morality of that? Okay. Let's see, Tuesday, we're going to critique some of the moral theories. We're going to look at objections to the moral theories from Susan Wolf's Moral Saints. And then on Tuesday, we're also going to sort of we're going to start our narrowing in, right? We're going to be talking about a concept called moral status. So if something has a certain moral status, that means that we ought to treat it in a certain way, right? So if a human being has moral status, well, then we shouldn't kill the human being. But does like a plant have moral status? And if so, like what kind of moral status? And what kind of moral status it has will determine how we ought to treat that thing. Okay. And we're going to be looking at Kenneth Goodpaster's On Being Morally Considerable. Okay, and then on Wednesday, the 22nd, this is like when we are going whole hog into particular issues. So first, we're going to be looking at kind of ethics and society, right? Ethics and general policy level decisions. So we're going to look at immigration, right? The ethics of immigration, the ethics of like trauma victims, and the way that identity plays a role in ethics. So on Wednesday, we're going to kind of do both of these cool, interesting topics, like immigration stuff and like trauma stuff, and like look at how identity plays a role in both of those. Okay. And then we're going to look at like whether or not there are any just wars. Is it always wrong to go to war? This is a question that we'll entertain, and we'll look at St. Thomas Aquinas and Gandhi for arguments for each one of the positions. And then on Friday, the 24th, just before Christmas, we'll look at our obligations to the global poor. And Peter Singer is going to argue that we have moral obligations to give away like the vast majority of our wealth in order to prevent people from dying that could have died. Okay. Then you have paper one due on Christmas Eve and a quiz. So hopefully you'll be able to like take a little break around Christmas and then start back on the 27th on Monday, where we're going to be talking about business ethics. The four readings that we have for business ethics all come from an anthology called The Office and Philosophy. It's hilarious if you're like an Office fan. If you're not an Office fan, like, you just got to kind of deal with it. These readings are a lot easier. So these 2 days, you're going to have a little bit of an easier time with the readings. You also have the midterm due that Monday. So you'll have, so I guess, yeah, so you won't really have much of a break for Christmas because you're going to be studying for the midterm. Okay. Then we're going to do ethics and health. We're going to ask if there's a right to health care, right? So people talk about like Medicare for all sorts of stuff like that. And people argue that we should have Medicare for all because people will say that, well, we have a right to health care, right? Like a human right, in the same way that I have a right not to be tortured. Perhaps I have a right to be able to meet the minimal conditions for my health. And so we're going to ask, well, is that true? Is there a right to say health care? We're going to look at 2 authors, one that says no, one that says yes. Then we're going to go on to abortion, pro-life, pro-choice. We're going to look at 2 really interesting papers about the ethics of abortion. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ethics and non-humans, right? So the moral status of animals, the moral status of, say, plants, the moral status of ecosystems. These last several days of the class, right? So the December 31st up until January 5th are all going to be sort of focused at this level of like, we have these non-humans. How should we treat them? Is it wrong to say, kill a hog in order to make a meal out of it? Is it wrong to say, kill a tree just because we want to? Is it wrong to strip mine, right? Where they like destroy mountains to like mine, right? Are those things wrong? So that those are our kind of questions. So we can kind of see how the class is moving from a large theory level, like down to like a very particular, like concrete cases level, right? Yeah, so anyway, if you have any questions about any of this, please let me know, but we're not done yet. Thursday, January 6th, you got the day off. It's all about you. It's all about getting you caught up. If you have quizzes that you haven't done, if you have like, if you didn't turn in paper 1 for some reason, if you got COVID during this time and like couldn't do the work because you were sick, this is like one day for you to catch up. It's also a day to review and study and write. So you have the final paper due Friday the 7th at 11:59, and then the final exam is going to be due that day as well, right? So study, write, and catch up from the previous weeks. Because, I mean, I suspect that there is going to be some folks that are a little behind with the course content, right? And so this is a day just for all of us to take a breath because we're going to go fast, right? Okay, well, that's the class. Like I said, and as you probably see a little bit more clearly now, it's going to be a hard class. And it's going to be a fast class as well. So be prepared to do a lot of work and be prepared to give a lot of time to this class, and reach out to me if you have questions or if you have problems, right? Just a quick email to me can avoid so many problems. It really, really can. And I'm also here to help you. So I want you to know that, like, I'm like your friend, right? I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help you be able to understand what's going on, so that you can complete the class, right? And get course credit. and know more about ethics and philosophy and maybe how to be a better person. Okay, so email me with whatever questions that you have moving forward. All right, good luck.